Hi everyone, I'm Lucy Siegle. I'm a journalist, a broadcaster and a writer, and I specialise in climate and nature stories. Welcome again to the Be a Net Zero Hero podcast, part of the Be the Change series of conversations organised by One Carbon World in collaboration with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. One Carbon World is a climate positive not-for-profit organisation and an official observer organisation of the UNFCCC. They are registered in the UK and have operations in over 32 countries, offering advice and support on measuring, reducing and rebalancing the emissions of small and large organisations. Now, COP28 will be a milestone moment when the world will take stock of its progress on the Paris Agreement. The first global stocktake will provide a comprehensive assessment of progress since adopting the Paris Agreement. This will help align efforts on climate action, including measures that need to be put into place to bridge the gaps in progress, and we know those gaps exist. As every year, One Carbon World is attending this UN summit. They have showcased inspirational stories at COP25 in Madrid, COP26 in Glasgow, and COP27 in Sharm el-Sheikh. They've also had the honour to measure the emissions of COP27 and issue the official COP27 verification report and COP27 sustainability report for the Egyptian government. This year, they want to show the world their journey towards net zero and would love to tell you some more inspirational stories too. And that brings us to here. This fourth episode is called Sustainable Fashion. Now, fashion is often seen as one of the industries with the highest impact on our planet. So today we will discuss how fashion can stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution. Now, before we invite our first guests, and we've got some great guests, I promise you, we're going to ask some questions to Steve Kenzie, Executive Director at the UN Global Compact Network UK. Steve will tell us more about their work around Sustainable Development Goals and their support to businesses and organisations.
I'll start by talking about the bigger picture, the UN Global Compact. We are the largest corporate sustainability initiative globally. There's more than 23,000 participants in the initiative. It's a UN-backed corporate sustainability initiative. It started in 2000 when then UN Secretary General Kofi Annan saw the problems of globalization, where we had companies shifting production to developing countries in pursuit of lower costs, but they weren't shifting standards around working conditions and business practices along with them. And we had some real problems with children making footballs. Those of us of an age will remember those scandals. He recognized that we needed a global standard for responsible business, and he had a brilliant insight that we could draw from existing UN agreements that had already been accepted around the world. And so the UN Global Compact has as its foundation 10 universal principles that have been drawn from UN treaties in the areas of human rights, labor, environment, and anti-corruption. Our work is to work with our participants to help inspire greater ambition, give them skills and knowledge to enable action around that ambition, and we seek to shape the wider environment for sustainability. To join us is very simple. The CEO of the organization, however large or small, wherever it's located, just needs to make 3 commitments. Firstly, to operationalize our 10 principles throughout their organizations, to report annually on the progress that they're making towards doing so, and finally, to support the wider UN development agenda, which is best expressed right now by the UN Sustainable Development Goals.
Well, thank you to Steve for your inspiring message. Now I'd like to invite our first guest to discuss fashion and sustainability. So we have with us Mads Feiberger Rasmussen, CEO and founder of Organic Basics. Organic Basics is a sustainable fashion brand born in Denmark, as many sustainable fashion brands are. They make their basics to be both earth and people friendly, carefully choosing materials and fabrics that care for the environment, and only partnering with factories that consider their impact too, and designing all the basics for all bodies. That is so refreshing to hear. Welcome, Mads. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, I want to start with a general question, if that's okay, which is also one of the reasons why we're having this discussion, I guess. Fashion is often seen as one of the industries with the highest impact on our environment. Why do you think that is? And how can fashion stop being part of the problem and become part of the solution? These are big questions, but I know you're up for answering them.
Yeah, I mean, it is a very big question you're asking here. And I think it's important to actually just dwell a bit to what you just said here, because you said that fashion is one of the industries in the world with the highest impact on our environment. And if you think about that, it's quite ridiculous, because let's be honest, relatively, it's not that important for our society. It's not healthcare, it's not education, it's not big infrastructure. It's just fashion. And we should not allow for fashion to have such a big impact on our environment, because reality is it does not need to have such a big impact. You also asked how did it go this wrong, and how did we land here? And I think for us to understand that, we need to go quite a few years back, go back to the 90s, where we all of a sudden started really seeing these fast fashion companies introducing themselves to the market. And at that point, most fashion companies were introducing 2, maybe 4 collections every year. And then these fast fashion players came and started to introduce 52 collections every year. And that's 1 every week. And the big issue with this is that if you create a new collection and you launch a new collection in all of your stores every week, you don't really have an incentive to create a product that will actually last, because then why would the consumer buy into your next collection and your next collection the following week? So that's an issue in itself. But I also think the bigger issue that came with these fast fashion companies was that they started to price a t-shirt the same as a cup of coffee from Starbucks. And if you price your products as a consumable, the consumer will also treat the product as a consumable. We saw last year that 100 billion tons of clothing was manufactured. And within that same year, 85 billion were thrown out the same year. That's insane. But that is also what happens when you create products in a quality that is not durable and will be worn out after just a few washes. And at the same time, these fast fashion companies, what happened was they started to move the production to the Far East, which in itself is not a problem, because many of these Asian countries, they have great heritages and expertise in making really, really good clothing. Issue was that fast fashion companies only really cared about the price point. And what happens when you want to reduce the price point? You start pushing on labor wages, you push the product quality down. We saw in 2013 the Rana Plaza incident in Bangladesh, where more than 1,000 people died during the collapse of the factory, because these companies had just pushed and pushed and pushed for lower and lower pricing. And at the same time, they also don't really care about, you can't produce products at that price without using chemicals. And that harms both the people working with it, but it also really harms the environment. And I think that's the big issue that we are now fighting against this year and trying to find a solution for. But I also want to say that there is a solution for it. And reality is that it's not that hard. And that's also why it's so frustrating that fashion still has such a big negative impact on the environment. And I think in reality, there are 4 quite easy areas and solutions for this. First of all, transparency. Many of these large companies, they are not investing into truly understanding what is the carbon emissions per product produced. And you need to make this an active part of the design process. So the designers are not just designing to reach a certain price point. They are also designing to reach a certain carbon emission level. At the same time, it's just as important that these fashion companies are able to communicate to their consumers what is the actual carbon footprint. And you can imagine, if you're going into a store today, you're browsing for a new t-shirt, you can easily browse between you can easily see what's the price of the t-shirt, and you can sort of figure out what is it within my preference for pricing. We've introduced a carbon price tag on all of our products. So you can easily see how many kilos of carbon emissions has gone into the planet from making this product. And this should be just as easy as creating a price tag. And these many large companies are saying that it's too complex for them to do. We're a company of 20 people, and we have a very easy time doing this. So this is simply because the big customers are afraid to share the actual environmental impact of their products. Secondly, when you're pricing the products the same price as a cup of coffee, you cannot use organic or recycled materials. And for us to reduce the harm on our planet from fashion, we need to start working only with organic and recycled materials. They need to be certified, and you need to use either GOTS, GRS, OCS certification to ensure that these products are made with consideration for the planet. The third option is transportation. Transportation is, if you fly a product in compared to sailing it on a boat or putting it on a truck, it will have 20 times the impact on the environment as flying it in. And I think that while this is a big issue for many companies, and it is challenging because you're working with physical goods, and sometimes production, it gets delayed and you have to meet your deadline. You need to do something to shorten the lead time of getting your products into the warehouse. But the least thing these fashion companies can do is to be transparent around it, have it as part of their carbon emission calculations, and at least carbon offset for all of the transportation in their supply chain. And I think the final point, and probably the most important point here, besides the carbon footprint measuring, is really with the use phase with the consumer. Because when you're washing and drying your products, you're actually, that's 60% of the actual effect of the piece of clothing in its entire lifetime. It comes in the consumer phase. And many of these modern detergents we have today will wash your clothes clean at 20 degrees. So I would really suggest everyone take a hard look on the back of your detergents and see like how warm you actually have to wash this. This is also what is wearing on your clothing when you're washing too often. Only wash when you actually need it. And then I think just one final thing is that we're seeing now that people in Europe are on average buying 68 pieces of clothing every year, which is an insane amount. And it's coming from this like use and throw away culture that the fast fashion companies has sort of implemented into our society. But if you need to buy new clothing, buy secondhand. It's much cheaper. It's often more unique and much cooler than what you find in stores anyway. And then there will obviously be product categories where you don't feel comfortable to buy secondhand, such as underwear. And in that situation, buy from sustainable brands, buy from people that actually use recycled or organic certified products. And so I think, Lucy, like this is, if we can just, these 4 small areas, if we can just do this, we've solved the majority of the issues in the fashion industry.
I think you have. I think you just solved it all. I could give you a round of applause, Mads. I mean, that was really great. And the starting point was very important for me, because I think in the fashion industry, and I've spent a lot of my time on this supply chain in this industry, there's often this sense we say, well, it's a full spectrum industry. So you would expect the emissions to be big because it runs from the farming right up through to marketing, to what you see on the runway or the catwalk. But that's an excuse, as you have sort of laid bare. And, you know, certainly for me, I was involved in a film called The True Cost, which is a documentary that was on...
Great film.
Yes, thank you so much. And really that was the starting point for our film director, Andrew Morgan. He looked at this not as a fashion person. He came to it and he thought, how have all these people died making clothes? Why is that so dangerous? And you rightly point out, we're not in healthcare, we're not in munitions. So why would we put up with the impact and the danger and the risk. So thank you very much. Much to talk about there. It's not just my questions, though, Mads, that you have to answer. You also have to answer questions from some of our young people who are very, very heavily invested in this subject. I mean, I have to say, I speak to young people all the time about fashion. So we, as in every episode, we invite students from schools around the world to ask questions to our guest speakers, because we know the importance of inspiring sustainability and involving younger generations in the debate. So here we have students from Falkirk High School in Scotland. Let's see what they have to ask.
Hi, I'm Diana and I'm a pupil from Falkirk High School in Scotland, and I have a question for you. How do we know which brands are sustainable? What should we look out for?
Another great question. Thank you. How do we know which are sustainable fashion brands? What should we look out for? Mads, I think you mentioned a couple of certifications in your previous answer, but what should our students look out for?
I think the truth is right now, it's extremely hard to understand whether a product is sustainable or not. But I also want to say, I think that it's a great question from the students. And I also want to applaud the students in a sense, because they are this young generation is much more aware of this issue than their parents was. And it's really positive that we're seeing all of these questions. We're also seeing it with secondhand clothing. Like if you look at the age groups that are buying secondhand clothing, it's a really, really good development we're seeing. But still, if you're buying new clothing, it's really hard to understand whether a product is sustainable or not. The first thing you need to look for is the materials. You need to, if you want to buy a sustainable product, the material needs to be either organic or recycled. And just to make matters even more difficult, that's actually not enough, because it also needs to be certified. Because without it being certified, any brand can claim that they're using organic or recycled materials. The certifications I would look for, and the ones we see the most in the market, is the GOTS certificate, the GRS, and the OCS certificate. And I think again, sustainability is just as much your consumer habits. And that's also why I really want to say that think hard about it before you buy a new product. Only buy it if you need it. Buy it secondhand if you can. If not, look for these certification and sustainable materials.
Very well said. I would also add, I saw some new research yesterday for the UK, which showed that on average, people are bombarded with 10 messages a week from fast fashion brands, getting them to sign up or buy more clothes. So that is actually powering a whole chunk of buying. And these are clothes that become what we might call regretted fashion. So there is evidence to show that you don't really want them. Okay, so thank you. I want to just return to some of the things you alluded to before that you are actually doing, you and the team at Organic Basics are actually doing. So tell us a little more, if you don't mind, about your sustainability initiatives. And especially you mentioned why you think transparency is such an important value.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think so. We started Organic Basics back in 2015 here in Denmark. And I think similar to your colleague when making the movie, we had no experience from the fashion industry. And while that was quite challenging because we made tons of mistakes for this reason, and we probably still do, it also allowed us to look at the industry from a completely different perspective than what you would if you were already a part of this industry. So we decided to turn things quite a lot around compared to what you see with traditional fashion brands. First of all, as I mentioned, we only work with certified, recycled, organic, and recyclable textiles. For example, we're working with a textile called Tencel, which is a cellulose made from wood pulp, which is both stronger, it has a nicer feel than regular cotton, and it's significantly more sustainable. So we always try to be on the forefront with sustainable materials, because we know that you can only buy so much secondhand. You need to buy some new clothing, and it's important that's made in the right way. At the same time, we are a registered B Corp. That's a new thing that some brands started to register as I think maybe 10 years ago. It basically means where traditional companies, they are, at least the management teams and the boards, they are put into the world to create shareholder value. So they need to maximize profits. That's their only job. And in theory, you can get sued for not always acting this way, right? As a B Corp, you're not only working with profit, you're also working with planet and with people. So you have to, while you need to balance these three P's out instead of just focusing on the profit. And that allows for much more innovative decisions to be made in a boardroom and on a leadership level, because that it's not only profit you have to care for. So that's another thing that makes us quite different from traditional companies. As I mentioned before, we always try to put as much back to earth as what we take from it. So we always offset our carbon emissions, and we've actually also been looking into regenerative fabrics that actually take out more carbon from the atmosphere than they put into it. Regenerative cotton is a thing; it's still in the early stages, but this is actually something that could truly have a positive effect on our environment. Another thing that we've started to do is that we traditionally much sustainable clothing has been priced just as luxury pricing. It's really expensive, and it's not something that the general consumer can do. For us, we know that if we need to make an impact in this world, we can't just price our products for the very wealthy people. We need to be able to be accessible for everyone. So we're focusing a lot on designing products that are actually affordable. They don't cost the same as a cup of coffee, but this affordability element and inclusivity element, allowing everyone to take part in this sustainable fashion journey that's happening right now, is really, really important for us. But I think lastly, transparency and sharing the carbon footprint on all products, telling the customers exactly what the effects on the environment are when they're purchasing this product is really, really important for us. Every year, we're releasing an impact report where we're talking about our wins every year, what we've done well in terms of sustainability, but we're focusing just as much on our mistakes and things we need to do better every year. And I think that is also what is needed from larger fashion companies to actually build up trust with the consumer, because right now, all consumers think all fashion companies are greenwashing because nobody admits to their mistakes. Nobody wants to be transparent. And as I see it, that's the biggest issue we have right now. So I think, like, all in all, what we're trying to do here, what we're on a journey to do with Organic Basics, because we're definitely still not there, is trying to create the most sustainable alternative to buying secondhand.
Well, I really commend you for the stuff that you're doing. I think it's absolutely incredible. And I particularly like the inclusivity piece, because I feel in my own work, this is something that I neglected. And I think that we sort of just glossed over it and said, yeah, everything's going to be much more expensive, without thinking about who got left behind and ostracized. And it's incredibly important. So it's really exciting to hear what you're doing and how thorough and thoughtful your work is, and I think a lot of people, our students especially, but everyone listening, will be really kind of inspired by your work. So keep going. Let us know how we can help you. And yeah, it's just great to talk to you. And thank you so much for your time, Mads. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me here.
Okay, from one inspirational tale to another. We're going to hear now from inspirational organizations who are also making a difference, and we'll be back in a minute.
Digital technology can have a negative impact on our climate. So, as Soprasteria, a leader in European digital services, we are taking action. Firstly, by developing a set of tools and capabilities to reduce the environmental footprint of our digital activities, and engaging our colleagues to be exemplary on their digital eco-friendly practices. Secondly, by supporting our clients to draw their environmental roadmap and manage their digital projects.
Welcome back. We're now moving on to the last part of this episode, where we're going to discuss the connection between fashion and sports, and how collaboration between businesses can amplify and strengthen voluntary climate action. So I'd like to invite our guests. We have Fiona Morgan with us, SailGP's Chief Purpose Officer. SailGP are leaders in purpose-driven and sustainable sport with the ambition to deliver next-generation racing and be the world's most sustainable and purpose-driven global sports and entertainment platform. The Global League's goal is to champion a world powered by nature and create an inclusive league and change the sport of sailing by providing opportunities and pathways to inspire and accelerate fundamental change. SailGP is in a race for the future, for a better sport and a better planet. Welcome to you, Fiona. I'm getting kind of excited just even reading that out. I think it sounds incredible. Can't wait to chat.
Brilliant. Hi, everyone.
Hello. We also have with us Nicholas Rochat, CEO of Mover Sportswear, a pioneer in sportswear and the first outdoor collection in the world to be genderless and 100% plastic free. I mean, what an achievement already. Nicholas, welcome.
Thank you for having us.
Very, very excited about this conversation, as you can probably tell. Fiona, let's start with you. Could you tell us, please, a little bit more about SailGP, what you do, and your connection to sustainability?
Brilliant. So yeah, SailGP, we're a new sport. So we're only in our season 4, and we are the most exciting racing on water. So think Formula One, but flying on the water and powered by nature. It is nation versus nation and inshore racing, so iconic cities and really accessible for people to watch, a short format, very exciting. And actually, we're trying to make it equitable. So it should be, and one day it will be, a boat with the best athletes on it. So it can be the most equitable sport with men and women racing together. It's a purpose-driven sport. So I don't think you'll find anyone in this title in global sport in the world, which we're very proud of, and slightly scary sometimes having to pave the way. But we really believe from day one that sustainability, social and environmental, needs to be embedded in sport and really thought about everything from who you partner with, where you race, and what you do to leave a legacy. So yeah, it's an exciting role. We're a global sport and definitely trying to do the best we can and inspire others to follow.
I don't think I've ever met anyone who's creating a new sport before. This is a big moment for me. I'm sold. Where do I get my tickets? That's what I want to know. Okay.
ITV, we're on YouTube. Watch us. It's exciting. Racing in Spain.
This is something I'm going to become obsessed with. I hope you understand that. I don't need any more hobbies, but here we go. Right.
Brilliant.
I've got a question, a sort of general question for both of you. So we talk a lot about collaboration and partnership, but what is, in your opinion, the importance of collaboration between companies, suppliers, and brands when it comes to voluntary climate action? Fiona, let's stick with you. Let's go to you first.
Yeah, so obviously one of the Sustainable Development Goals is collaboration, and I've always looked at business that way. Collaboration and sustainability is essential. You know, sustainability cannot be competitive. It's not normal, like sports, not to be competitive, but we have to work together because we're running out of time. So it's really essential, especially in the sports sector. We need to learn from other sectors and work with leading innovators to help solve some of our problems. So it's kind of one of the basics, the basis of our whole sustainability strategy is working with the right partners to help us, and we can be the platform to kind of showcase and tell their story.
Brilliant. Some very good points, which we'll pick up on. Nicholas, sometimes, I don't know how to put this, well, I'm just going to say it. Sometimes fashion or clothing does seem quite competitive. So how do you approach collaboration and what's your take on it?
Well, we are very purpose-driven as SailGP is. And for us, it's more about reinventing our own business. So basically, we are confronted to the entire industry in what we do, because we are the first to be 100% plastic-free in the sport segment, where 99% of the clothes are made of plastic and synthetics. And what we are doing is really to go against the trend, because the trend is to go to recycled plastic, which we believe is the wrong option. And to go against the current, against the trend, is very difficult. So we have to work hand in hand with our suppliers we need to discuss, to explain, to convince each and everybody. And that's what we have been doing in the last, in the first 2 years preparing this project, in the last 2 years, because we celebrate our second anniversary today. So we are a very young company, but I give you an example. When we prepared the project to go 100% plastic free, we had to work on the smallest details, and as always, the devil is in the details. So, for example, it was easy to get a fabric made of cotton or wool or linen or whatever we can use as a natural fiber, but it's very difficult to go to the trims, to the small cord stoppers, to replace the elastane in the cords, to replace the plastic in the trim stoppers of Velcro, or to get the zipper. To have a zipper made of metal with the teeth and the slider and the puller. This is easy. YKK and Riri will provide this. But the tape it is fixed on. The tape is polyester. And we wanted to be 100% plastic free. And this took us a year to convince both YKK and Riri to provide us with a zipper, with a tape, a band made of 100% cotton. What they told us was it was not worse for us, for our volume, to bring back these old machines to do cotton tapes. And we could convince these suppliers that we were the start of a new market segment, which will develop, which is based on natural fibers, and that other players would come behind us and certainly open this market, which is worth a few billions.
That is incredible. What a brilliant story. Like, and also the narrative that you use, which is completely true. Like, you will be the start of that, you know, opening that door. But, you know, what a great sell. I hope other people will use that in different contexts, because that is a very brilliant takeaway. Okay, so much to ask both of you, but we're going to hear firstly from our school students who have another question for you, because they would like to know more about this type of partnership. So over to the students of Shinfield St Mary's Junior School.
Hi, my name's Charlie and I'm a tree champion at Shinfield St Mary's Junior School in England, and I have a question for you. Why aren't there more companies working together like you are?
Okay, a great and provocative question there from our students. Why aren't there more companies working together like you all are? What is going on? Fiona, any thoughts?
I think it's business, you know, and it's the people at the top who are still probably in that competitive mindset and don't see the bigger picture. But from my work here at SailGP and my past work in a media company, I actually have seen cross kind of collaboration, you know, in media, like the media industry are working together to solve some of the problems in sustainability in broadcast or production. So although it's probably not as apparent to the consumer or to young people because they don't see it and hear it, there's a lot of coalitions going on behind the scenes. Obviously, there needs to be more, but I do think there's kind of a underswell of companies, you know, realizing they got to work together, because it's inefficient to be spending money, resource, time when they're all trying to solve the same problem. So I would say there is hope to the young people out there. It is happening. You probably just aren't hearing about it as much as you should.
Yes, absolutely agree with that. And just on broadcast and media, because you mentioned we have sustainability initiatives with BAFTA, with their Albert project, which you will see at the end of big shows like soap operas like EastEnders and big shows like that, and covering Climate Now, which goes across English-speaking journalists all around the world for most of the big newspapers. So yes, you should hear more about it as well. Nicholas, what's your response to our students?
Yeah, I think it's a really good question from the students, but I have the same answer as Fiona has. Is companies are usually not purpose-driven. And that's the main reason why they don't like to communicate and to collaborate. I think we are super lucky to have this will to move forward for a better future. And this is the base of our company today. It's the base of our market proposal also, our business proposal. And that brings by itself people alongside this project. So the encounter with SailGP was very natural. We have other collaborations past collaboration and future collaboration coming in the exact same logic that people just want to do things better, to have an impact. Here we can use sports for good. And we know the power of sport. We know how much it can move things and people. So we are really super happy to collaborate, and we are lucky to have this beautiful project in the end and to be able to take care of it.
Amazing. Well, let's drill down into the beauty of that project and how it works a little deeper. And I love that idea. You know, once you're purpose driven, and then collaboration is part of that. That's automatically how it will work. Okay, so as promised, we'd love to understand your individual perspectives as companies. So let's start with SailGP, Fiona. 34% of SailGP's Season 2 emissions correspond to Scope 3 emissions, which is a key area of focus. So tell us more about what you've been doing to address these emissions, and why is that important for SailGP?
I think the most important thing is understanding your carbon footprint and what emissions are. And I think in sports, we're probably a bit behind the rest of the world. We've been hiding behind the power of sport and not really understanding our footprint. So for us, it was understanding that. Scope 1, 2, and 3, what is our material impact on the world? So we are quite honest and transparent about what that is and the challenges. So we recently published our Purpose and Impact Season 3 report, and you'll see in there, we were very honest about our challenges, which, like you said, is Scope 3, which is like other businesses. For sport, that's challenging though. That's supply chain. Who do you work with? Your sponsors, your suppliers. And we have a lot of them globally. We're a global sport. We race from Copenhagen to Bermuda to New Zealand, you know, so it's quite a wide remit. So it's really the first thing we did is look at our supply chain and who we can affect and influence. So that's a big piece of work. The really hard challenge in sport, and I was at a conference recently talking about this with 300 global sports, is fan travel. So sports' big issue in our footprint is our travel. We travel our athletes around the world. We travel our logistics around the world. We travel, fans travel to major events like the Olympics or World Cup or SailGP. And so how do we kind of approach that and redesign our sport to be more sustainable? So it's really finding partners, you know, being honest about the challenges and looking into it. It might seem small steps, but things like on travel, it's setting up a travel committee. It's giving travel carbon targets to different departments and kind of having a travel cap. So they have a cap that they have to decide what event and what value they'll have. It's looking at aviation, sustainable aviation. Do we invest in that to reduce our footprint? It's like we talked about earlier about how do we ship around our materials. And actually we made a decision from day one, there's no air freight. So by sea is how our boats and all our equipment is transported around the world with our great logistics partner, Kuehne + Nagel. And the only time we'd ever air freight is if we need parts. So in the emergency of crashes, which we're having way too many of, because the racing's too exciting and competitive, but that only goes in air freight. So for me, it's really kind of being honest about your challenges and addressing them and looking for partners to try to solve those problems. So honesty, authenticity, and leaning into the issue.
I love that. Leaning into the issue. So good. I mean, it sounds like you're doing really, really good stuff. And Nicholas, what is Mover's focus at the moment in terms of sustainability and a plastic-free lifestyle? And how has your cooperation with SailGP impacted your strategy?
Yeah, it did impact our strategy. I will mention that. We were super lucky to be able to reinvent a completely new company back in 2019, 2020. We worked on revamping the brand, and we could think about our supply chain, our manufacturer, our logistic, our shippings, our impact, our sourcing, and it was beautiful because we could really rethink and reinvent everything from scratch. So what we did, we're a Swiss-based company, we're a small company. We try to source as locally as possible. Our main water-resistant fabric is called Ventile. It used to be a British, a UK pattern, but now it's owned by a Swiss company, so it's made in Zurich. We developed the first wool insulation called Swiss wool. I think, Lucy, you got a sample for your dog a few years ago. and we manufacture in Portugal, which is the closest manufacturer at volume in Europe we could find, and we are happy with. We have a logistic partner in Spain, Most of our fabrics, cotton fabrics are sourced in Portugal themselves. And then we have a warehouse in Spain where everything is shipped directly to the end customer from the warehouse. So we could really reduce our carbon footprint, our impact as much as possible. But mostly our impact is on the fibers we use. And here we are extremely strict to use only natural fibers because we are completely convinced that the industry's answer to use recycled plastic is wrong. I repeat myself, but basically we are transforming a toxic linear economy into a toxic circular economy because we are re-injecting the same toxic pollutants, forever chemicals, into the environment when we recycle plastic. So we are fighting against that quite seriously. SailGP changed our strategy because we used to be a ski clothing company, technical ski clothing company. Our background is Gore-Tex membranes, synthetic fabrics, and we moved to natural fabrics for comfort reasons, in search of breathability and thermal regulation. This was the research and development we did in Mover's history that brought us to this new concept of being completely plastic free. We launched an outdoor collection as a first collection, so it's a Patagonia without plastic collection, as I like to name it. And now suddenly we met with sailors, and we believe this is an absolutely beautiful opportunity to work on a super high demanding performance oriented sport with the best sailors around the world. And the first collection we're launching is an onshore collection. The second will be an offshore collection meant for the sailors. And this is really the possibility for us to prove that natural fiber will excel, that we can completely replace the synthetic ones. And so basically the opportunity makes the thief. So we could have done tennis or mountain biking, and we'll do sailing as a second sport.
Amazing. And I should just say, I've never been so excited as to receive a parcel from you many years ago, which was the square, beautiful wool that my late dog Bobby, he was a very old gentleman at that point, but he spent his last years in luxury on this lovely bit of wool which he adored, and it's actually been inherited by my two other terriers, but they fight over it, so you need to send me another one. Okay. I think what's super interesting here is the way that you are alluding to basically turning a whole industry, because they, the plastics and the need to use plastics in performance sports and outdoor wear, it's not just a vague notion. I mean, there's a heavy amount of pressure legislatively at every stage that you're sort of turning round to and saying no. So give us a sense, if you don't mind, about what it means to be the first brand to market with 100% plastic-free sportswear collection, because I want people to really understand how monumental that is.
Yeah, thank you for asking. We calculated that 99% of sportswear is made of plastics, of synthetic fibers. And this is a calculation given the sportswear turnover, global turnover. So less than 1% of the fabrics we have are natural. And as explained before, we had developed natural solutions for ski wear up to the point in 2017 that we had proposed a ski cotton collection made of ventile fabric, high density woven cotton, which is wind and water resistant, and together with the wool layers underneath. And only then we realized how beautifully comfortable this was compared to synthetic fabrics we had been using prior to that, even ourselves with our membranes. And we ask ourselves, why did we ski for 50 years in a plastic bag? There is no reason to do that. Why do we wetten ourselves from the inside, trying to protect ourselves from the outside, where we had 2 days of snow last winter in Switzerland? So we skied for 90 days and we had 2 days of snow, which was beautiful. This summer, it rained maybe 2 or 3 days in the mountains, but all the rest of the time we are going hiking and mountain biking and trekking with sunshine, a little wind, and sometimes it's a little chilly up there. We don't need to be completely protected from water. The sailors on their boat, they don't need to wear a neoprene outfit because they are not scuba divers, they're sailors. So it's the same thinking that we have and that we can apply to sports. I'm convinced that Jesse Owens, when he won the Olympics in '36 in Berlin, he was actually as fast as Usain Bolt was when he broke the world record. The difference in terms of timing is 7%, but Usain Bolt is running, of course, with synthetic clothes. That doesn't give him an advantage. He's running on tartan racetracks, and he has starting blocks, and that's why he's faster, not because of what he wears. So we need to send out this message that what has been proposed to us in the last 50 years may not be the best option in terms of comfort and performance, and that we can really have fantastic alternatives using natural fibers, a bit like what is done in agriculture or in wines, going for organic or biodynamic products, that actually your product gets better, the taste is better, and you get more out of it without polluting the planet.
Amazing. It's almost mind-blowing the way that we can start to see these really clearly. And I think, you know, if you're a sailor and you need neoprene, you're spending too much time in the water. Okay, you're a diver, not a sailor. These are such fantastic examples. And I think they really show that if we don't collaborate, work and have partnerships with other businesses, we're going to fall short in our goals and objectives, especially when it comes to voluntary climate action. And I think, you know, your collaboration between the two of you is immensely special and incredibly inspiring. There's so many lessons that people will be able to take from it. So I just want to say thank you for taking part in this episode and for this discussion. Keep going, and we will be joining you on that journey, because I can't wait to see what you do next. Amazing. Thanks, guys. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you very much.
At Robertson, our purpose is to assure a sustainable future. Our 2030 responsible business strategy defines how we deliver this to our people, our partners, and our planet. We are delivering on ambitious environmental and social objectives by strengthening our decarbonisation targets and becoming climate positive. We have cut our emissions by 67% through empowering our employees with carbon literacy, partnering with key industry bodies, and delivering on a structured decarbonisation programme.
We've now reached the end of our fourth and last episode in English of this Be a Net Zero Hero podcast. I would just like to thank every single one of you for listening and following this great conversation. We've just learned of fantastic examples on how fashion and collaboration and partnership between brands can contribute towards reducing our carbon footprint and mitigating our impact. Please remember that you can follow these conversations on Spotify, YouTube, and Amazon Music. Our next episode will be in Spanish, and we will have Faye O'Connor, British Ambassador to Uruguay, discussing with multiple guest speakers about voluntary climate action in Spain and Latin America. That's all from me today. So thank you for listening, and I'll see you next time.